All right, guys. Well, welcome to this video. This is kind of new. I've been teaching memory seminars for 32 years and won memory tournaments and that kind of stuff. And often my videos are just me teaching a memory system. But I have a friend of mine. He's become a friend. He was a student of mine, and he still is a student of mine. He got my 1189 Bible memory course. The 1189 Bible memory course is this. There's 1189 chapters in the Bible. So there's 66 books and in 1189 chapters. He has memorized half of those so far. He's going to get them all, but he just hasn't got to that point yet. He has memorized half of the chapters of the Bible. I think I'm going to title this video "Regular Guy Memorizes Half of the Bible Chapters." So if you just click this video, because what I mean by regular guy is this, it's a compliment. He's never competed. He might compete in memory tournaments one day, but he's never competed in memory tournaments. He's not like a memory champion or a memory record breaker. He might be one day, but as of right now, he's not a memory instructor, trainer, champion. He's a regular guy who's passionate about the Bible. And so he got my memory course, and he has memorized half of the chapters of the Bible. Now, I don't mean word for word. Instead, and we're going to do this, I'm going to test him in a minute. It's something like, I could say, what does Exodus chapter 20 say? And he could tell us what's in that chapter. Or what does Leviticus chapter 19 say? And he could tell us what's in that chapter. So, Jared, I want to say hello and welcome. And how did I do on that introduction as far as what you've done here?
Thank you, Ron. I appreciate you even inviting me on your show. It's an honor. But yeah, I mean, I'm not one who has a good memory. So for a while that was, I guess it said that it's not a good memory. I didn't have a trained memory, I guess is the word. But there was a point where I wanted to just kind of improve my memory and start remembering things better. I just recently started to read. I wasn't a big reader, didn't like to read books. And that's kind of where I got involved in this. Is I started having a desire to read, but then I would forget things that I read. So then I ended up basically from there looking at different ways to remember what I read. And I stumbled across some different courses that helped you to remember things that you read. But then I got intrigued about the brain and trying to figure out some memory techniques that I learned about along the way. And that's kind of how I stumbled across your programs and some of your teachings. So that's how I did. But yeah, for me, I work in the insurance business. I'm married, have 4 kids, but for the most part, yeah, just work on doing that. So I haven't really done anything in the memory, like you said, training or anything. But also too, yes, the Bible is something that I'm very passionate about. I love reading the Bible. So when I saw that course as well, I needed to see what that one was about. So
now, did you have my black belt memory course first?
Yeah, right here.
There you go. Look at that. That's the certificate.
I don't think I ever sent you the picture, because you did usually ask for a picture after, but there it is, right? So now we have it. And this was just about a year ago. So July 4th of 2022, I finished this course. And this course was the foundation of what I've been doing ever since. So that was about 6 months before you came out with the Bible training course. But during that time, it's interesting because I was able to use the techniques that you taught, or that were taught on there. And I memorized all the every book of the Bible by using it. So all 66 books, I remember, put them in a location, used that. And then and many other things I was using along the way. And then you popped out with the Bible course, and I was like, man, that's awesome.
So you took the black belt memory course, and in that course, I never taught how to memorize the 66 books of the Bible. So you just took what you learned from the black belt memory course and applied it to the 66 books. And then later on, I came out with this 1189 Bible memory program, and you attacked. And by the way, for everybody who's watching, we're going to explain to you how he did this. We're going to lay out the system here on how he did this. I'm just wanting to lay the foundation as kind of an introduction here. So then you did the 1189 Bible memory program. Is it fair to say you've memorized about the first 500 chapters of the Bible? And it's a chapter summary, that's about, you're right at almost to Psalms, right?
Yeah, so I think it's about 478 or something like that, because I got up to
478 chapters so let's do this. Can I just quiz you a little bit?
Go right ahead.
Okay, all right.
I'm a little nervous though. I'm usually pretty good. I get usually about 90 percentile usually, but I'm a little nervous, so I'll breathe a little bit. But no, go right ahead, please.
First, and I appreciate you saying that. And I know exactly how you feel, because this is how I've made my living for 32 years. People are like, hey, man, you want to be on Good Morning America or CBS early show, whatever? I'm like, yeah. Can we talk about memory, or do you have to quiz me? They're like, no, dude, we have to quiz you. That's kind of why we're having you on the show. So, but also it's kind of fun to demonstrate what you learn. So I understand. But here's the thing I want you to know. Don't put any pressure on yourself. You don't have to get it perfect. We're going to prove our point if you get 90% right. So here's my favorite one of my favorite ones. We'll start with this because I don't even have to look it up. Exodus chapter 20. What is in Exodus chapter 20?
That would be where Moses gets the 10 commandments.
That's it. Moses gets the 10 commandments, Exodus chapter 20. I love that one. And so I always want to start there. Here, and I got all these scripts here. Let's go to Joshua chapter how about Joshua? Well, what is Joshua chapter 1?
So that's where God's basically giving him a pat on the back in my mind. So telling him he can do this, encouraging him, getting him ready and prepped to be able to take over for Moses.
That's great, man. He knows what's on that. Joshua chapter 12.
Okay, so Joshua chapter 12, basically going over Matt. So there's 32 kings that Joshua and the nation of Israel defeat.
Joshua going over the kings. That's right. I got it right here. The kings. That's amazing, man. And I know how you did it, and it's still amazing. So how about Joshua chapter 24?
So there's a couple things in there. That's the death of Joshua, but
that's what I got.
Departing words, but also Joseph's bones. I think were also basically left there at the end of that one, but I might be wrong. But
no, that's what I had. I had Joshua's death. Numbers, the book of Numbers, chapter 10.
So that's them marching through the wilderness. They're marching. Very exactly where they're marching to, but
no, that's what I got. It says the beginning of the march, and then in parentheses I have Sinai to Kadesh.
Kadesh.
Yeah, that's it. Yep. You're the beginning of the march. I mean, come on, that's great. Here's a good one. Numbers chapter 22.
So that's when Balaam is riding the donkey, and the donkey basically starts talking.
That's it, with the donkey talking. That is awesome. Now I'm going to quiz. I just quizzed you on like 6 chapters, and you got them all 100%. That is so awesome. That is so incredible. And I want to quiz you a little bit more, but before we do that, let's take a step back. And the question all the people who are watching this now are like, how did you do this? And so I just want to, just on a surface level here, you've got 400 and almost 500 chapters of the Bible. You've memorized their summary. How did you do this?
Well, it's actually a technique that I learned about called basically memory palace, mind palace, loci. And actually, the funny thing is I learned it from others, but never was able to apply it as good as I did once I took your program. And I'll tell you why. Because most other programs out there, they taught what it did and how to do it, but they didn't teach little lessons to do it. Like, what I mean by that is, so you take a location of a house. So like, I'll start with my house. As I walk into my house, and I also like the idea is 5 locations in every spot. So, so the book of Genesis is done in my house. Right over here. So it's Genesis 35, 36. So I know here so it's a genealogy of Esau. So what we did there was, I knew that that's where that is. So I know where it's at in my house. So if you ask me what Genesis chapter 36 was about, I know this is where the location is. And it's genes, and I picture genes on a seesaw. So that reminds me or associates it with Esau and the genes with genealogy. And that was something that you kind of taught with that as well. But I like that idea because what you do is you continue to make pictures. So over there, I have another item that I have in there. And for that one, I picture Joseph or a dream. That's one's Joseph's dream. So I have kind of a picture of somebody that I know named Joseph. And I picture little clouds coming out of his head, and he's sitting there and he's having a dream. And that's how I remember that one. But one of the techniques too is trying to make the pictures very vivid. And if I don't recall what it is, that means there's probably something wrong with the picture that I had there, or it's not impressed enough in there. So I try to use all my senses. And these are all taught in your program on the Black Belt memory. But yeah, so I try to use my senses. I try to picture the things maybe. And I try to associate it the best that I can. And sometimes I even use my sense of smell, my sense of make believing I'm touching it. Am I playing with the little seesaw back there to remember Esau? What is it? My favorite kind of jeans that are on there, so I remember. But you're just trying to make that picture as vivid as possible.
That's great. And I appreciate, and there's about 2 or 3 things here that you just said that I really want to pick apart. First of all, I want to say thank you. I appreciate you hearing, you've learned of the mind palace or the memory palace from other people, but you said what made the difference was in my course, I actually applied it and showed you how to examples. People always ask me, there's other memory courses out there, and I don't want to say any names, so I'm not here to talk bad about anybody, but in general, there are some other memory courses out there and some well-known ones. And the instructor of those courses has never accomplished anything in the field of memory, nothing. And I do believe that's important, because how in the world are you actually going to learn? You can talk about it in theory all you want, but until you actually get in there and do it, and your students do it, it's not going to make sense. And so that's why in my course, number one, I like to go and break these records and do these things, but I also want to walk my students through that, because that's how you really learn. So I appreciate you pointing that out, that you can study the theory of memory all you want, but you got to get in there and do it. The second thing that I want to bring to that you said that was so good. It was so good, Jared. You said, if you don't remember something, it's a problem with how vivid it was. In other words, if you do this system, so you've got behind you right there, you've got a seesaw with jeans, people are wearing jeans, the genealogy of Esau, and that's on that. Now, was Jacob's dream chapter 37, or was that just another chapter down the road?
No, that was 37. Yeah.
So 37, you've got Jacob over there dreaming, and you look at that piece of furniture, you see and I said Jacob, it's Joseph, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
That's what's great about Jared.
I was wondering if you're trying to trick me there, though, but no, yeah. So it's Joseph's dream, yeah.
You made such a great point, though. If somebody does this system and they're like, "Oh no, I tried that doesn't work. I tried it doesn't work." Well, what Jared just said here is, if it doesn't work, It's because the picture isn't vivid enough. So he tries to involve all his senses with, he sees it, hears it, smells it, touches it, tastes it, feels it. It makes it stronger in his mind. Let me ask you this. So essentially, Jared, what you're saying, you use the mind palace, and I kind of know the answers to these questions, but I like asking it because I want to hear you say it. So you mapped out your house. Is that right? You numbered 30, 40, 50 pieces of furniture in your house. And how did you go about that process? How did you know which pieces of furniture to select? And how many do you do in each room?
So I try to make it the best that I can to have a pattern, so I don't get lost. Like I don't jump from one room to another. I like the rooms to kind of connect. So like when I walk in my door, I have my living room. So right there in my living room, I go from my right all the way around, and I pick 5 items in there to use. So one's on my, like the lamp, one's on my television, one's at the door that goes downstairs into the basement. One's a couch that we have there, and the other one's the end table there, the table that we have that, you know. And then I go into the next room that's adjacent to it. And I try to connect the rooms in a fashion where they kind of connect to each other. And then I do them by 5s. And that was something that, like, I've never heard that from any other person but you. And that's helped me out tremendously because then you're able to count and know. So 5 is here, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. Because that's usually the hardest thing, is remembering if someone says Genesis 30, I don't know exactly everything where, like, I wouldn't be like, oh, that's 36. Sometimes I have to go back and count for myself. So 5, 10, 15. And I get better as I get, I do better as I get more familiar with it. But that was probably the hardest part. But knowing I can break them up in 5, I can do 5, 10. And I know where 20's at. I know where 30's at. I know 40's right here. So then I can go back 36. And it just makes it that much simpler to do.
And that's, I taught a 6-year-old once how to memorize the presidents of the United States, and we did 5 in a room. So we picked 5 pieces of furniture in one room, and then we put a washing machine for Washington, a dam for Adams, and a chef for Jefferson. And then we did 5 in the next room, 5 in the next room. And then this little 6-year-old kid went to the dad, and they said, give me a number between 1 and, 45, because it was 45 presidents at the time. Even a 6-year-old can count by 5s. So the logic of doing 5 in a room is it helps you learn the numbers quicker, just like you said. So is there what size furniture should you use? I mean, what's a general rule of thumb that you use when you're selecting the pieces of furniture that are going to be in your mind palace?
Yeah, so I try to make sure that, one, I start, from one side and go around, but I try to make it on a piece of furniture that kind of stands out. That's, that I'm going to be able to remember, because sometimes if things move, and that was the same thing with my old, like sometimes using other stuff besides, I had to use some older houses that I lived in, things that I grew up with, as I extended my memory, needing more memory palaces. So yeah, I break down and try to remember in a fashion of bigger pieces. So for instance, there is my 36, 37, I have some files, 38 is my printer, 39 is my desk, and then I have my calendar right here, which I use for 40. So I try to use things that, are available in that regard.
So in theory, what you could do is you could have your house is Genesis. How many chapters are in Genesis?
There's 50.
50. So you could put 50 pieces of furniture, select 50 pieces of furniture in your house. If your house, you can't select 50 in your house, you could use your house and your friend's house, 25 in each, and combine those for Genesis. Exodus, how many chapters do we have in Exodus?
There's 40 in Exodus.
40. So you might select your favorite restaurant or your friend's house or your cousin's house. And then Leviticus, how many chapters do we have there?
That'd be 27.
Okay. So this is, how many people know this, right? This is like so cool. So then you could use a different house. Am I speaking to what you did here? You kind of maybe use different houses or different locations, and that location was that entire book, and that kind of helped you group the books that way?
Yeah, exactly. And the hardest part is thinking, I can never come up with that many memory palaces. And that was one of those limitations I started putting on myself when I first started doing this. Thought it'd be impossible to do in the first place. But then I thought, how am I going to come up with all these memory palaces? But as your brain starts working, it starts generating these. But yes, so what I've done is, what I try to do is, I did my house for Genesis because I already had spots. I've used my house for the 45 presidents, and then I've used it for the books of the Bible. So I was like, this would be a good one to start with. I already have it done. Exodus, I used with a Kingdom Hall, or a place that I worship at, that I'm presently at. Now, then I started thinking maybe I need to start trying to associate the books with something that I would remember, because that's kind of hard sometimes too. You can get lost in where you're at, which house is that in and which house is that at. So like Leviticus, I thought of, Leviticus is a lot of laws. It's a lot of, different offerings and things like that. So I thought, what could go well with that? And I thought, well, for one, library matches the L. Plus, there's a lot of books of laws and things like that in a library. So that's where I kind of use library. Like judges, I use something like it's not a courthouse, but it's a house that kind of had 6 areas that kind of helped me to, think about a judge's booth sitting there. So these are things that kind of help me to go right to that. So I'm not trying to think what house or place did I put that book of the Bible in, because sometimes that can be a little bit confusing.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. So, and I want to get to a next question that I think is really important. And it is, how much time do you allocate for review? And the reason I bring this up is I think this is one of the most overlooked factors of memory. When people ask me, I memorized everybody who died in the war in Afghanistan. It's 2,401 people, 2,401. And I memorized them in the order of their death, rank, first name, last name. It's over 7,500 words. When I began estimating how long it was going to take me to memorize these 7,500 words, these 2,400 people, I significantly did not estimate how much time I was going to need to allocate to review. So when you're doing this process, and you've got the genes and the saw over here for genealogy of Esau, and you've got Joseph's dream over here, you should be able to memorize that pretty quickly. And in my Bible memory program, I actually give you the pictures, so you don't have to agree with them. You could switch, but if you use my pictures, it goes pretty quick. You see the picture there. But here's the thing: you still have to make the picture strong, and you have to review. What's your schedule like as far as how much time do you memorize? How much time do you review? And how do you do that?
So what I did from the beginning was, like, let's say Genesis. I tried to get the course done, and I sat down and I made sure that I finished Genesis, but I had the memory palace already there. I already knew where I'm placing everything 1 through 50. I had the 50 spots. I knew where they were at. And then I did the course with you, along with you. And sometimes I instituted the pictures, like you said, that you came up with. Sometimes I had other ones that I had in mind. So I kind of swapped them along the way. And then I took that one chapter and learned everything on that one moment. And I tried to impress it the best that I could in my head. And then what I do from there is I'll continue to try to, without looking, I never look at it while I'm doing it. If I can't remember it, and I can't remember, I keep trying. But if I forget, like let's say I forgot that, okay, I was like, oh, I knew what 35 was, but I didn't know what 36 is, and I couldn't remember it. I would just go back to that one after, and then I would try to impress in my mind a different picture, try to make it more vivid, try to make something change in it so that I would remember it. And then I would keep doing that till I got all of them down in my head, and I would practice, sometimes 2-3 times a day. Maybe I'm just, hey, I'm going to take, it takes 5 minutes probably to maybe 10 for the bigger chapters. Psalms might be a little longer, but take that time and just review those in my head and get them clearly. Pick the picture myself walking around with the looking at that certain spot or item and seeing what's going on there. And then after that, usually the pictures are pretty impressed in my head, so then I can move on to the next one. So then, like, a week, maybe 2 weeks later, I'll move on to Exodus. So I'll do the same thing. I'll sit down, I'll learn all of Exodus. I already have the mind palace ready. And then I do it, and then I create the pictures that I want to form for those. And I do the course with you, and then I'll review Genesis maybe once a day. And then Exodus, I'll do 2 or 3 times a day. And then once I get once a day, I can do Genesis pretty good like that. And then I just kind of do it every couple weeks or once a month. So now, like on Genesis, I pretty much know it. So it's already in my long-term memory, I think. So for the most part, I practice Genesis maybe once a month. The newer books that I'm learning, I'm trying to practice those more and more. And eventually that's kind of how it works. It gets to the point where I can kind of already know them in my long-term memory and don't have to practice them as much.
Well, Jared said so many important and really smart things here. One of the first things that maybe you picked up on it or not is he's doing 10% at a time. He's doing about 10% of there's 1,189 chapters, so he's doing about 120 a month. 120 a month, roughly. He maintained that pace pretty good until I delayed it this last time and didn't get the information to him quick enough. But he's doing 10% a month. So really, it took him about 4 or 5 months to build up to the 500 verses. 4 months. It took 4 months because that's about 10%. So he's doing 10% a month. The second thing that he's doing that's really good is, and I'm going to go back to my example. When I memorized the Afghanistan memory wall, 7,500 words, I would practice by writing out the 7,500 words. And then I remember the first time I wrote it all out. I wrote out all 7,500 words. And then I went through and checked my work. I had 10% spelling errors, 10%, 750 names that I misspelled. And I did what Jared said. Jared said he will go to Genesis chapter 36 or 24 or whatever. He can't remember that. And then in his review, he focuses on what he couldn't remember. Oh, I couldn't remember Exodus chapter 20 or Exodus chapter 19. So I'm going to go back and make these pictures stronger in my memory. I'm going to focus on those. I'm going to review those more. And then when those are strong in my memory, I'm going to go back and review the whole thing. And then another really great thing that he said here is he reviews it frequently. He reviews Genesis very frequently. And then once it gets in there, it gets in his long-term memory, he only has to go back once a month and review it. And that's just to keep it fresh. That's just to keep it in there in his long-term memory. I'm going to quiz you a little bit more, and then I'm going to let you go, Jared. And then I'm also going to see if there's anything that I've left out that you want to add. But let me quiz you. I'm going to go to, let's see. I know you thought you were off the hook. He took a deep breath. He's like, oh, good. I'm done with the quizzes. And then I pull another one out of the pocket. Judges.
I had 100% so far, though. So now I know I messed that up. But now just no. That's how you learn, though. That's how you learn.
So you're working with a cushion here. You're working with a cushion. 100%. So judges. So let's walk through what you're doing now. I say judges. What immediately pops up in your mind?
So an apartment that I used to live in, and it had 6 families, six floors. So basically 3 on one side and 3 on the other.
Now let's start at the very first location in this house. So Judges chapter 1. What is the piece of furniture there, and what is in that chapter?
So I picture a lion coming out of the door on the first floor. Now I lived on the third, but I picture a lion coming out of the third floor, and it's basically attacking a canine. So
and I know what it is. Now so a lion attacking a canine. I'm looking at the answer here. I know why, but you tell us what that means.
So a lion in the Bible, for me, I think of the tribe of Judah. So I think of some of the Israelites as one of the tribes, but they are fighting a canine, which was one of the pictures that you got for me. So Canine is the land of Canaan. So they were trying to attack and take over some of those areas.
That's great. So now we're in the same Judges building. Okay. So everybody listening, in Jared's mind, we're in this building. This mind palace represents Judges. He just went to the first piece of furniture for Judges chapter 1. Now I'm going to ask him in his mind to travel to the 10th piece of furniture and tell us what is on the 10th piece of furniture. And that will tell us what is in Judges chapter 10.
Okay. So I go up, I have the first 5 out there on the porches, so up to the 5th one. Then 6, I get into my apartment, and then 7, 8, 9 are around there, and then 10 ends up at a table that I actually, would sit at. So it's my like dining, not a dining table, but like a end table type thing. So there, I have 2 things that are there. I have a tow truck, and it's basically pulling sticks, and it's going through a toll booth in LA. So what I did was I memorized the Judges by doing the number, like 1 is a gun, 2 is a shoe, and then 6 is sticks. So I pictured a tow truck putting sticks through LA. What that reminds me of is the Judge Tola. So from there, I take the toe and I take the la. And I can remember because I knew the name Tola. And then I also have a picture of my brother Kevin, and he's sitting on a chair that's shaped like a J, and he's going back and forth. And basically that is a J and a chair meet Jer. So those are the 2 judges that are brought out in number 10. It was Tola and Jer, and that was what
we're Judges chapter 10.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, very good. So in Judges chapter 10, 2 judges, and tell me say their names again.
Tola and Jer.
Tola and Jer. All right. So now this is your last quiz. No more quizzes after this because you proved yourself 100% score. The last chapter in Judges is so it's gonna be the last piece of furniture in your palace here. It's what is the number and what chapter number and what was on that in that chapter.
So that would be Judges chapter 21.
That's right.
And it is basically the Benjamites were getting wiped out by the Israelites for something they did back in chapter 18. Very, very gory thing that they did. But anyways, they almost got wiped out, but there was a provision made to allow the Benjamites to continue as a tribe, and that basically they were saved.
That's amazing, Jared. That's amazing. That's amazing. It's now, and when he is describing this, I don't want you to think he was going into a lot of detail there, telling you the picture, but that detail is helping him remember it. But it's not complicated. Jared, let me ask you this: would you say that this is complicated, and would you say that anybody could do this?
I mean, I did it, so if I can do it, anybody can do it. I never imagined that I would be able to do it. It takes time. It takes time, especially creating pictures. It took me a while before I got a little better at that. It took me because it's something different. You're not used to creating pictures for everything. But once you start doing it, you get involved in it, your brain does the work. I mean, it helps you. You start thinking of things. You get excited about it, and it's possible. Anybody can do it. And I like what you say because it is simple. And you just do the simple parts. You add on to the simple parts later on. And that's kind of what I've been doing as well. So some of the other details that I've been giving, I mean, Benjamin was Benji. I just think of the dog Benji. And I think of him and I think of him in that room and he's being saved. I mean, it's not hard to come up with a picture. I know a little bit more of the story and stuff, but for people to just have that simplicity, that it's there. And then you can build on that as it becomes more ingrained. Then you can start adding things to that. And that's what
Go ahead.
Yeah, and that's what I plan to do. I mean, I put, instead of trying to do everything at once, I get the basic for each chapter. And then if I want to build on it, I go back and, hey, I already know that, Judah is the lion. What else is in that chapter? Maybe that I can add to that picture. But I'm not doing that now. I'm just trying to get through the Bible. Once I get that down, who knows? Maybe go through it again, take a scripture, memorize an exact scripture for word. But yes, it's as basic. It's easy. If I can do it, anybody can do it. I have a friend that kind of makes fun of me with names because I can't remember people's names very well, and I get confused or forget. So that's another tactic I'm going to use later, is the techniques for memorizing names, but I'm sticking to this right now. But easy for anyone to do. You just got to stick with it and believe that you can do it. If you have that belief that it's possible, you can do it. Because I never thought, how am I going to come up with these mind palaces? But guess what? Every single time there's a mind palace that comes to mind, or I go and create one, and then to me, it's possible. Now I'm just looking forward to getting all the way done in Revelation and telling all the people who said I wouldn't be able to do that, be able to show them I could.
Well, I know that you are, and I'm so proud of you, and that's why I wanted to invite you on here, because I wanted to highlight you and spotlight you. It's when I memorized everybody who died in the war in Afghanistan, I used a motivation, because remember that 6-year-old that I taught how to memorize the presidents? Well, that was 45 presidents at the time. When I was doing the Afghanistan wall, it was 2,000 people. I just kept telling myself, this is just roughly 50 times what that kid did. It's just, it's a little bit more than that, because I was doing rank first name and last name. But here's the point. I kept reminding myself, the process itself is simple. The process, seeing genes on a seesaw is simple. Now, what Jared did is still extraordinarily impressive, because it's a display of discipline. He actually sat down and did it. That takes time. That takes discipline. It probably takes less time than you think, but if you're willing to invest a little bit of time, you can get this just as good as Jared did, or whatever is important to you. Down below I'm going to put the link for my 1189 Bible memory program. I'm going to put the link for my black belt memory course. Both of these are courses that Jared has. Black belt memory is my general memory course for names, faces, numbers, chapters of books, giving speeches without notes. And 1189 is the specific, do you want to memorize all 1189 chapters? If you do, then this is the course that you want to get. But Jared, I'll probably have you back one day. We'll talk about something else or go into more detail. I know I'm going to have you back. When you get this 100% done, I'm going to have you back. So 6 more months. But thanks, man. I really appreciate this. And everybody else, I hope you learned something here from Jared. I'll see you on the next video.